Hello everyone, welcome back to Be the Whole You. My name is Gulveg, and today we're going to be talking about this very clarifying and aligning new moon in Gemini on June 6, 2024. So let's just get right into it. This new moon is at 16 degrees in Gemini, and as is the case with all new moons, you have the sun and the moon are conjunct. They're right on top of each other, and the moon, it represents our subconscious, our feelings, our emotional side. And then the sun represents our identity, how we understand ourselves. And so every new moon, we have this alignment between our subconscious and our conscious self. And in this particular case, the new moon is also conjunct with Venus. And Venus is associated with sacred feminine energy. She's associated with wealth and prosperity, beauty. I always consider Venus also to be associated with health. So anything that's tangible, anything that is helpful as far as how we sustain life. And so we have Venus, which is conjunct our identity and our subconscious. And they're all at 16 degrees in Gemini. And Gemini is a zodiac sign that's ruled by the planet Mercury. And so the planet Mercury, as well as the sign Gemini, is associated with communication. It's associated with the intellect, with understanding. To a certain extent, it's associated with learning. But Gemini is more about like how we express those ideas once we have analyzed them. Virgo is also associated with Mercury too, but Virgo is more of like the internal kind of processes. So how we analyze and how we organize information and how we understand and digest that information. Whereas Gemini is more about how do we express that? How do we pass it on? It's a great sign for teaching, for example, and for anybody who is wanting to communicate an idea. So it's really useful for art and for writing and such. And so we have our identity and our subconscious that is right smack in alignment with how we understand and how we experience our livelihood, wealth, health, relationships, love, beauty. That's all the realm of Venus. And just as a side note, what kind of set the stage to a certain extent for this new moon, because I'm seeing a lot of correlations between the energy of this new moon in Gemini and the parade of planets that happened on June 3rd. And that energy is going to last for the next 2 weeks. So if you haven't heard about the parade of planets, it happened on June 3rd/4th, depending on where in the world you are. And it was when Jupiter, Mercury, Uranus, Mars, Neptune, and Saturn are all seen as a straight line in the eastern sky. And so the significance of that astrologically is essentially exactly what it looks like. It's alignment. It's alignment with our internal world, with our external world. It's alignment with our belief systems and our emotions and our right, as well as our desire to be heard and to be seen. And it's aligning us with how that is actually expressed, or how that is delivered in a certain way within our external world, how we live our life. So there's this alignment happening around this new moon between our internal world and our external world. And I think that a lot of us are going to start seeing with this new moon, have like an up-leveled awareness of how the internal world and our emotions, our beliefs, our thoughts, how this sets the stage and influences our external world. I think a lot of us are going to see a lot of synchronicities around this new moon. So the head and the heart align, and we're going to see with Venus being in the mix, we're going to have a lot of clarity on what it is that we need to truly be nurtured. This is a really important question. Like on the surface level, it seems like that would be a really simple question. But as a joy coach, I have to say that 90%, at least 90% of all adults that I ask, what gives you joy? Most of them have to either think about it for a while because they haven't pondered that for a while, or they just flat out don't know. This alignment in this new moon is a perfect alignment to do the work necessary to ask those questions. What gives me joy? And is what gives me joy now the same thing that gave me joy 5 or 10 years ago? Our lives change, we change, our priorities might change. And it's okay to change the answer to that question from time to time. It's not a sign of being inauthentic or not knowing who you are. It's a sign of being an organic being who changes in response to the changing environment around us. We are not separate from our environment. We are a part of it. And this new moon brings that truth right up to the light, that we are not separate from our environment. We are a part of it. And when I say environment, I'm not just talking the planet environment. I'm talking about our social circles. I'm talking about where we work, how we work, the neighborhoods that we live in. We are, with this new moon, we're able to take a look at all of that and really assess whether or not it's working for us. Is it nurturing us? Is it nurturing the kind of life that we are wanting to nurture and grow for our future? If the answer is no, then we might be doing some pruning as far as that's concerned. So also Venus rules relationships. So there is this has been coming up for the last few videos here, since at least the last full moon, where a lot of shifting in relationships have been happening. And really, I think that started to kind of go in flux when we had the eclipse in April, because there was so much focus on getting to know ourselves and this whole assessment of self that has been a theme for the last few months. And now with Venus being in alignment with the new moon in Gemini, and it's a new moon, so it's about new beginnings, we may see that we start renegotiating our relationships. We set new strategies. This is also a really good opportunity to not just revamp intimate relationships. So perhaps there needs to be a conversation around new boundaries, or perhaps there wasn't boundaries and there needs to start being more boundaries, or what the difference is between the boundaries and the walls. Like, are there certain boundaries that need to be renegotiated in order and how they're being expressed and how they're being communicated? That makes a huge difference in whether or not a boundary is a healthy boundary, or if it's something that is alienating us from those that we would truly like to relate to. So this is a really good new moon to take a look at all of that, especially how we communicate with those around us. Communication is a huge theme with this new moon, because Gemini is all about communication. And then, and we have both the sun and the moon in Gemini, obviously. And then we have Venus, which is about how we relate. It's associated with Libra. So it's about partnerships. It's about, Libra is very diplomatic. It wants a win-win for everybody. And so this is a really good time to start renegotiating those terms, both professionally as well as in our personal relationships. So if there is, like, for example, an idea that you've been wanting to pitch, if there is a new protocol or strategy at your job that you have really been thinking would be beneficial for those changes to take place, but you really haven't put you haven't put your foot forward yet. If there is a business idea that you are wanting to get some support around, anything like that, this is the time to do that, because Venus is, and on top of that, I haven't even mentioned that Mercury is conjunct Jupiter, and Jupiter is considered the lucky planet. Jupiter is I love it when they call it like the Santa Claus of the planets, because it's considered with luck. It's big energy, and it amplifies anything it touches. And Mercury, as we just talked about, is the ruling planet for Gemini, and Mercury is conjunct Jupiter. So the very planet that rules Gemini is actually in Gemini, and it's conjunct with Jupiter. So it's almost like it's like Gemini squared. It's communication squared, and then it's communication squared, and then it's plugged into an amplifier and turned up. So communication is key. If you have anything that's been weighing on your chest that you need to get out, if there are conversations that you need to have, now is the time to do it, because most likely, and Mercury's not in retrograde, it's direct, most likely those kind of tough kind of conversations will have a sprinkling of luck that might soften the edges. Or if there's something that you're really excited about but maybe a little bit nervous, maybe you've been just thinking about, you know, expressing, such as like the new idea or a business plan, if you're wanting to write a script, if you're wanting to start that book, if you're, you know, wanting to start that vlog or put up the website, or, you know, create those the bare bones for this business idea or this creative venture, if you're wanting to create a series of artworks, now is the time for all of that kind of creativity. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to get the results from that right away. So I want to impress the fact that this is a new moon, and there is a lot of energy around just it, and the whole energy, when I like tap into it, like what it feels like versus what it means, it just feels like this clearing of cobwebs, like there's like this dusty house that's been maybe vacant for a while, and we're just like clearing it off and opening up the windows and, you know, dusting everything off and mopping the floors. And it's just like everything is like, now we get to see where we're really at and what we might want to do in this new space. I have a feeling that there's some folks who are going to be watching this who have probably already made some big decisions on how they want to implement some changes. And this new moon might mark like a big milestone in taking those first steps towards making those changes, because the changes that we make during this new moon and the decisions that we create during this new moon, they have a real potential to have very long-term consequences. And when I say consequences, I mean outcomes. Consequences has kind of a negative connotation, and that's not what I mean. It will have very big outcomes. So your words are very much your wand in this new moon. Your words are going to be amplified. Your energy is going to be heightened as far as the tone and their meaning for what it is that you're communicating. And so get really clear on the outcome that you want from whatever it is that you're communicating. So one thing that came to my mind when I was taking a look at all this is the fact that this is very much all about throat chakra. And throat chakra, as far as like the mind-body connection that it represents, it's known in Sanskrit as Vishuddha, which means the great purifier. This right here purifies and basically edits the thoughts, and then through that pathway, we filter out what it is that we want to say, and that's when it's in balance, right? If that area is not in balance, then we end up either verbally dumping all over people and giving every single last detail without any kind of editing, and then the person who's listening completely gets burnt out, or we end up hyper editing, where we are in analysis paralysis over what it is that we want to say, so much that we don't even end up saying what it is that we want to say. So this is a very good energy to bring balance to that. Our power of discernment will be heightened. That's also Vishuddha. Vishuddha is always talked about when people talk about chakra theory, is they always talk about the speaking your truth. But the thing that is very seldom talked about is the fact that this is also about hearing, about listening, and about discerning. First and foremost, this is about how we align with our environment. How we express it. And when we express, it changes our environment because we're part of it. When we speak something, it has an effect on the people who are around us. When we communicate something either on social media or at our job or at our school or wherever it is that we're at, we become an active participant in that environment. And so we will become very acutely aware, especially those of us who really pay attention to the ebbs and flows of energy. We will become acutely aware of just how effectively we actually do influence our environment around us. A lot of us aren't aware just how influential we really are, that we really do create a wake. We create a ripple effect. And we will become very acutely aware of how our environment affects us in return. There will become this refined awareness of the as within, so without. As, as above, so below. Like that the universe is fractal, meaning that it works in patterns. So you might start seeing how your internal self aligns with what it is that you're seeing around you. And then the question begs, what comes first? Is it the environment that dictates the individual, or is it the individual that then influences the environment? And the answer is it's both. It's a cyclic thing. So if there's things in the environment that you're not liking, the very first thing to take a look at is, well, how are you participating in that cycle? How are you going to break that pattern? If the whole cycle requires your participation, how might you stop participating in that pattern, in that cycle? These are things that we have the opportunity during this new moon to have a really refined awareness around. And once we do, we then have more freedom, because then we have more choice. It's no longer in our blind spot anymore. We have a broader perspective on the choices that we have, the options that we have. And these options don't even necessarily have to be always really huge, life-changing things. It can just be the way we communicate, the tone that we take. It can be whether or not to engage in a conversation or choosing to walk away. Like, even these small, seemingly small, everyday kind of decisions can end up having really big effects. And so all of this is very much refining our communication so that we can align. We have more freedom of choice to align with the kind of relationships, the kind of life, and the kind of environment we want to create. The great purifier, the Shuddha, is about expression, but this is also a center of creativity. They talk about the hips being the center of creativity because that's where the programs for emotion are held. So that's where we get the desire from to create. But this is how we express it. So how are you using your wand? How are you using your words? Or your artwork, or whatever it is that you put out into the world to express? Is it truly expressing authentically who you are? Are you perhaps hyper editing? Are you in analysis paralysis? Or are you maybe over sharing in a way that just feels like kind of chaotic and unfocused? These are some of the things to take a look at, and to see if it's aligning with you or not. The other thing too that's really interesting is that this new moon trines with the South Node at 12 degrees in Libra. So the South Node is about our past, it's about our lessons learned, not necessarily about wounds or traumas, but that can be part of it. It's just about what it is that we've already lived through and what we've already grown through. So Libra, as I said, is about diplomacy. It's about relationships. Venus is the ruler of that sign. And right now, Venus is in Gemini. It's conjunct the sun and the moon. And then you have this same type of energy, Libra, that is like in our back view mirror. That's what the South Node is. Like if you're in your car, the South Node is your rear view mirror, looking back, and you can see where you've been. So there might be some lessons, because growth is a spiral. It's not a linear straight thing. So that's why folks, when we're on a real growth journey, a personal growth journey, a lot of folks will mention the same thing. It's like, you know what? I thought I already lived through this same situation. I thought I already healed this pattern. Why am I revisiting it? And it's mastery, because mastery comes through repetition, and growth is like this. It's not a linear thing. So right now we might see some remnants from the past, some residuals. I always look at it as like echoes, right? So like if you were creating a vibration and you all of a sudden like banging a drum, right? And you're in an echoey chamber and you're banging this drum. As soon as you stop banging the drum and you stop creating that vibration, it takes a while for that residual echoes to go away. And so the residual echoes is like the residual echoes from the past. And that's exactly what happens is like, so like you see a pattern that you've created, and that pattern is you banging the drum, right? Like this is the vibration that you've been creating for a while, whether or not you know it or not. And maybe that pattern is a helpful pattern, or if in the case, if it's a toxic one and it's one that's hurting you, you start realizing that that is not a rhythmic vibration. It's not in harmony, and you stop. And then the echoes continue. Those echoes represent the same kind of patterns that are happening as we are moving in this growth pattern. And so when you revisit the same kind of pattern, for example, perhaps you got out of a emotionally abusive relationship, and then you end up getting a new job and you're finding out like, my boss is now the same kind of personality type with some of the same kind of toxic behaviors as the relationship I just left. Well, you already have awareness on that, and you probably have healed a lot from that, or at least maybe perhaps your part in creating that dynamic. But even if you have, that doesn't mean that we're immune to experience those things in the past. We're going to be less likely as we go along, because then those echoes become fainter. So it takes a while for the residual energy, the residual patterns that we've already have dealt with, that we've already seen, that we've acknowledged, perhaps that we've even healed personally, but we may still encounter the echoes of our past as we move forward, until eventually it dissipates enough to where now it's not even part of our story. But that process can take a minute. It doesn't happen just like that. So if there are echoes from your past that end up coming back, for example, because it's Libra, it's probably going to be more about relationships. It might have a tone of having a difficulty making a decision, or it may have a tone of people pleasing, being overly diplomatic, using such soft language that you really lose your meaning. All of those kind of things are things that might come up as Libra is, as this new moon is trined with this Libra South Node. So the thing that can also help happen with this South Node is that we may start allowing other people's perspective to play too large of a role in our own personal decision making. There's a lot of folks are going to probably make some pretty empowered decisions that are where you're going to feel very clear on this. You're not apt to make a decision based on misperception at this time. If it is a decision that is for you and your own health and your own well-being, chances are that you're going to feel like clicked in, and you're going to know where you stand. But other people may have their opinions. Other people maybe perhaps just flat out don't approve. And they may kind of sow the seeds of personal self-doubt that might cause you to pause. So instead of making the decision based on how others are perceiving you, but on other people's opinions and such, if you notice that you're in that role, use this energy. Instead of making the decision based on what other people think, take a take account of how they are responding, and then use that information to base how you communicate your decision. See the difference? So we can base how we communicate our decisions, our perspectives on, read the room, so to speak. But it doesn't mean that the room has to dictate our perspective. They don't dictate what it is that we're communicating, but we can communicate in a way that is most effective for the audience that we're speaking to. So we can edit how we say it, but we don't necessarily have to edit what we say. So there's a lot of nuances to this particular moon. So this is a really good opportunity to make sense of circumstances that may not have made sense before. So for example, if you have been waiting for a really long time for something to happen, like you've been waiting for a particular job opportunity to come up, maybe even one that you've been told to expect, or a promotion, or if you have been waiting to hear back from, somebody that you submitted an idea to, or you're waiting for test results of some sort, it's very possible that in this next week you might you might get the answers back that you're seeking, and or if something did fell through and it doesn't seem to make sense, things are going to start making a little bit more sense in the next week or two, where things that were just like, I don't know why that happened, I don't know why things are moving slowly, I don't know why things have been stagnant, anything of that nature, it's very possible that we might have this aha of like right place at the right time type of deal, where we realize that why something happened. And I think what's coming to me around that is, I think some of this clarity might be about things that happened actually a long time ago, not even recently, where we don't realize why something happened the way that it did. And then just now we start realizing that the way that things transpired since whatever happened back there actually ended up, we probably through your own decisions, because it doesn't always just happen, on its own this way, but you start to see like how you made decisions and how that experience may have changed you in such a way to where now you really are in a very fortuitous place, or you have a lot more options than you thought you did. So there might be clarity around chaos around this new moon. For all of that to say, there might be clarity around chaos. So the other thing that I want to talk about, the moon is not aligned with Mars and Chiron, but I do think because this really echoes like that eclipse energy that we had back in April. Both Mars and Chiron are in Aries and they're conjunct. And so this just adds more conviction and more confidence to whatever decisions that you're making. So lean into that. If there are some decisions or some ideas or some communication that you might be a little nervous about, you're not really sure how it might be received, or you're concerned that other folks may have a contradictory opinion on it, lean into the confidence and say what you need to say. Say what you need to say and do what you need to do. And if it is a move that is with the intent of doing what's healthiest for you, and you're still being respectful to other people, 99% chance that it will end you up in a better place because of it. So let's just pull a couple cards and just see if there's any additional information that the tarot might have for us on this. So I invite you at home to, or wherever you might be, to set the intention with me that whatever part of this reading that pertains the most to you and your particular circumstances will be messages that will just kind of highlight to you. You'll know exactly that part's meant for you. All right, so I ask, how might we best leverage this new moon in Gemini? Serve our best and highest good. All right. So right off the bat, I'm actually on this one, I'm just gonna show you like all of the 4 cards that came up. And then, because this is one of those things where it doesn't seem as linear, it's more of like the energy is just, it's all talking together. It's like one circumstance, not individual circumstances that are linked. So we have the 10 of Pentacles. That's nice. This is about reciprocation. It's about generosity. It's like everybody's getting taken care of. Reciprocity. It's an awesome card. We have the King of Swords. This is about like being an authority figure, a leader, and clear communication, no BS. And then we have the Sun card reversed. A lot of times this has to do with inner child healing when it's in its reversal. And it can be about like the internal side of success. And then we have the 5 of Wands reversed, which is about conflict. And when it's in its reversal, it's talking about internal conflict, personal conflict that we're having with ourselves. So the Swords is very much about communication. And we have the 10 of Pentacles, which is about community. This very much ties into what we were just talking about as far as the individual affecting the community, the environment affecting the individual. And so in this case, this new moon is telling you that you are the expert of your own life. You are the expert of your own experience. You get to define for yourself what your role is within the community, and that what might trip you up is internal conflict, internal noise mentally that is probably based on, it could be like on inner child healing stuff, of things that we picked up as a kid that we don't have permission to say. Even though like as adults, we don't like to think of ourselves as like, I don't want to get in trouble. That's very much the feeling when we're holding back something that we need to say or something that we want to express, is a feeling of being in trouble. And so what might trip us up is this inner conflict that makes us second guess ourselves. And when really, the 10 of Pentacles say that the outcome for that, if you do decide to put yourself out there, is actually going to be very positive. That even if there are some bumps in the road, that ultimately it actually allows you to get what it is that you need from your environment, from your community, and from your relationships, because you're communicating in a way that is more in alignment with your authentic needs, your own truth, your beliefs. And so this is really very much like an up-leveling in not only standing in our truth, but being able to be seen and heard within that truth. So it's a very powerful new moon. It's a really good one. And I look forward to hearing your guys' experience over the next couple weeks in the comments below. Let us know how you have experienced this new moon, and yeah, how it feels for you. All right, thanks folks. Love you all, and I will see you back here in a couple weeks. As always, if you could definitely hit that subscribe, and if you liked this video, thumbs up. The bell notification, all of those things really help the algorithm notice this channel so that we can get this information to more people who love to be able to see what the stars say above and how that affects our world below. All right, thanks folks, and I will see you in a couple weeks. We're going to take a look at the full moon. Bye.